So this is tutorial 16. We're going to be using the Django application. You're going to be using your first app, some view functionality or view functions, a URL mapping, model class migration, and at the end you're going to be doing an exercise. And just to note, for those who haven't used databases before, you need to have something what they call an ID. It's just a naming convention, a naming convention in databases in order for the database to run. All right, that's it. Please like, share, and subscribe. And on that note, if you have any questions, you can reach out to etmmediagroup@gmail.com. It's etmmediagroup@gmail.com, or go ahead and pause the video to download everything and to make sure that you're doing everything correctly. All right, thanks.
In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create your first website with Python and a very popular framework called Django. So it's spelled with a silent D and is pronounced Django. It's a web framework for perfectionists with deadlines. So if you're a perfectionist and you want to quickly put together a website that is fast, scalable, and secure, Django is your best friend. And here are the popular websites built with Django, like Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, Washington Post, and so on. Now you might ask, what is a framework and why do we need a framework to build a web application or a website? Well, a framework is essentially a library of reusable modules. These modules provide functionality for common tasks. For example, in case of a web framework like Django, we have modules to work with HTTP requests, URLs, sessions, cookies, and so on. These are the concerns of pretty much every website or web application out there. So all this functionality is already baked into Django. We don't have to code it from scratch. That is why we use a framework like Django. Now, technically a framework is more than a library, so apart from providing these modules, it also defines a structure for our application. It tells us what folders and files we should have in our project. So this provides a consistency amongst various Django projects. So as you move from one company to another and work on different projects, you can easily transition from one project to another, because all these applications follow the same structure. Now, with that introduction, let's create our first Django project. So back to PyCharm, close the Hello World project and create a new project. Okay, let's call this new project PyShop. Go ahead. All right, now down the bottom, let's open up a terminal window. In this window, we're going to install Django. So we use pip to install Django, but be sure to add 2 equal signs here, followed by 2.1. With this, we're telling pip that we want to install Django version 2.1. The reason I'm doing this is because in the future, when you're watching this video, chances are there is a newer version of Django out there. I want to make sure that you can easily follow these tutorials, even though what I'm going to show you in these tutorials will most likely work with the latest version of Django. I just want to be on the safe side. So let's go ahead with this. All right, Django is installed. Next, we need to create a Django project. So here, press Ctrl and L. This cleans up our terminal window. You don't have to do it, but it's just easier to see. To create a Django project, we need to execute this command: Django -admin space start project space. We're going to call this project PyShop space period. So when we install Django, Django brings a command line utility called Django admin. So this is a utility or program that we can execute from the command line or terminal right here. Now, this program takes various arguments. In this case, we want to use this argument, start project. With this, we're going to create a project called PyShop in the current folder. So this period is important here. That means the current folder. If you don't add this period, this utility is going to create an extra folder, and that looks a little bit repetitive. So let's go ahead with this. All right. Now, back to the project panel. If you expand PyShop, you can see that this is our project that we created in PyCharm. And in this folder, we have these files. So init.py, you have seen this before. That means this folder is a package. So we can import various modules from this package into other modules. So here we have this settings module. In this module, we define various settings for our application. You're going to see this later in this course. We also have the URLs module. And with this module, we define what should the user see when they go to, let's say, /about/contact/products/shopping cart. Again, we're going to work with this soon. And finally, we have this module, WSGI, that is short for Web Server Gateway Interface. The purpose of this module is to provide a standard interface between applications built with Django and web servers. This is an advanced topic, so for now, don't worry about it. Now, outside of this folder, we also have this new file in our project, that is manage.py. As the name implies, we use this module to manage this Django project. With this, we can start our web server, we can work with our database. Again, we're going to work with this soon. So let's open up the terminal window one more time. Now type out this command, Python if you're on Windows, or Python 3 if you're on Mac, because as I told you at the beginning of the course, Mac by default comes with an installation of Python, that is Python 2. But in this course, we're using Python 3. So Python 3 space manage.py space run server. What is going on here? So with Python interpreter, we are running this program manage.py and passing run server as an argument. This manage.py is essentially the same program that we worked with here, Django admin. But we used Django admin before creating a Django project. Now we have a Django project. So in this project, we worked with manage.py. This is a module that contains some Python code. So we use this module to manage our Django project. So let's go ahead and run our development web server. As you can see, this started a development web server at this address, http://127.0.0.1. That is the address of your current machine. Now note that after this, we have :8000. Unfortunately, the link below this address has a problem. As you can see, the port is excluded. So if we click this, it opens up our web browser and points it to this address. So we don't have the port number. Let's add :8000 at the end, and here's our first Django website. So we created this Django project. Now, this Django project can contain multiple apps. These apps don't represent the entire application. There are small functional areas in our Django project. Here's an example. Imagine you want to build a website or a web application like Amazon. Amazon is a big website. It has so many different functions. Instead of implementing all these functions in a Django project, we divide this project into small functional areas that are focused on one concern. For example, we could have functional areas like product management, order management, customer management. These are completely different functional areas. The functions we have for managing the customers are different from the functions for managing the products. By the same token, when you go to an organization, there are small departments or small offices specializing in different areas. So with this analogy, we divide a Django project into multiple Django apps. Each app is focused on one functional area. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to add a new app to manage the products in our imaginary shop. In the future, let's say we want to add a blog to our online shop. We could come back here and create a new app that represents a blog. Now, the beauty of these apps is that we can reuse them across different Django projects because each app is essentially a Python package. Let me show you. So back to our project, let's open up the terminal window. So this is the terminal window we opened earlier where we started our web server. Now up here, we have this plus button for creating a new terminal window. So let's click that. Now let's type out this command, Python on Windows or Python 3 on Mac, manage.py. So we are using the same program, the same module, but this time with a different argument. Start app, and we're going to call that app products. Let's go ahead. All right, now here we have a new folder called products. Let's see what we have in this folder. We have a subfolder called migrations. We'll look at this later. Below that, we have this init.py. So products is a package. We can take this package and reuse it in another Django application, or more specifically, Django project. We can also publish this package to PyPI for other people to reuse in their Django projects. For example, if someone else wants to build an online shop, they can reuse this package for managing the list of products. They don't have to build this functionality from scratch, okay? We have this module, admin, and this is used for defining how the administrative panel of this app will look like. Again, we're going to come back to this later. Below that, we have this module, apps. Unfortunately, the name is a little bit confusing because right now we are inside of one app, that is the products app, and it doesn't make sense to have a module called apps inside of an app. So I don't know why Django creators decided to call this module apps, but basically we use this module to store various configuration settings for this app. So it would be better to call this config. But that aside, let's move on. Next, we have models, and this is where we define classes or new types for modeling the concepts in this app, in this domain. For example, in the domain of products, you probably have concepts like product, category, review, and so on. So we could model these concepts using classes. Again, we're going to come back to this and define a new class here. Next, we have tests.py, and this is where we write automated tests for this app. That's an advanced topic beyond the scope of this course, so don't worry about it. And finally, we have the views module. And this is where we define what should the user see when they navigate to a certain page. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create your first view or view function in Django. What is a view function? A view function is basically a function that gets called by Django when the user navigates to a particular page. For example, here we are on the homepage of our website. When we go to /products, our browser sends an HTTP request to our web server. At this point, Django takes that request, it inspects the URL or the address, it figures out that we want to see the list of products. Then it will call a function, which we call a view function, and the job of this function is to return the response to the browser or to the client. So this function should generate some HTML markup to be returned to the client. Our browser will get this HTML content and display it as a page right here. Now, technically, if you want to be a web developer, you need to know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I'll try to do my best to hold your hand throughout this course. But in the future, be sure to watch a tutorial about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. On my channel, I have plenty of JavaScript tutorials. I recommend you to start with my JavaScript tutorial for beginners. So back to our project. Inside the products app, let's open up the views module. So here on the top, we have some boilerplate code. From Django.shortcuts, we are importing the render function. So Django is a package, shortcuts is a module, and we are importing the render function. You will see this soon. Below that, we have this comment. We don't need it. Let's create our first view function. So define. We call this function index. It doesn't really matter, but by convention, we use the word index for the main page of an app. So when we go to /products, this will be the main page of our products app. Now, potentially in the future, we could support additional URLs inside of this app. For example, products/new or trending and so on. So we call this function index. Now, all our view functions should always take a parameter, and that is the HTTP request that is passed to this view function. So as I told you before, when we navigate to /products, our browser sends an HTTP request to our web server. Django takes this request and sends it to our view function. With this request object, we can find information about the client. Now, in this tutorial, we don't want to worry about HTML. We just want to return some plain text to the browser, like hello world. So on the top, from Django.http module, we need to import a class called HTTP response. With this class, we can create an HTTP response to return to the client or the browser. So back to our view function. Here we return an HTTP response object. So we're creating an instance of this class, right? Now, as an argument to the constructor, we pass hello world. Now we need to add an extra blank line above the index function to make PyCharm happy. Beautiful. As simple as that. So we are done with this view function, but nowhere Django knows that it should call this function when we send a request to /products. So we need to tell Django that, hey, whenever there is a request to /products, call this index function. We need to map this URL to this function. A URL is short for Uniform Resource Locator, and that basically means address. Okay, so let's do the mapping. We're done with this module, close it. Back to our products app, right-click this folder and add a new Python file. Call that URLs. The name is very important here. This is one of the conventions that Django framework defines. So we need to follow this convention to structure our project. Okay, so this adds urls.py inside of the products app. Now in this module, once again, by convention, we should define a variable called URL patterns. Make sure to spell it exactly as you see here. So there is no underscore between these two words, and all characters are in lowercase. So we set this to a list object. In this list, we map various URLs to their view functions. Now to reference a URL, we need to import the path function. So on the top, from Django.urls, let's import the path function. With this function, we can map a URL to a view function. So we call the path function. The first argument is a string that specifies our URL endpoint. Here we pass an empty string that is a string with no characters in it. And this represents the root of this app. Let me show you what I mean. So imagine our app starts at /products. So if the user sends a request to this endpoint, they will be at the root of this app. Potentially here we could have other URLs like /products, /one, /detail, or /products, /new, or trending, or whatever. So all the URLs in this app start with /products. Okay? Now back to the first example. What happens if we take away this /products? We are left with nothing. And that is why we use an empty string here. Now, as the second argument to this function, we need to specify our view function. So we defined that view function inside of the views module. So first we need to import this module into the URLs module. Now, this is how we do this. From period import views. Period means the current folder. So from the current folder, we are importing the views module. So with this syntax, we're telling Django to import the views module that we have in this folder. Now you might ask, Mosh, why didn't we import the views module like this? Import views, because views is actually in the current folder. So why do we have to use the from import syntax? The reason for this is because views is kind of a generic name. So it is possible that our project has a dependency to another library called views. With this syntax, Python will end up importing that module instead of the views module in the current folder because that will take priority. So to remove these potential issues, we use the from import syntax. So now we imported the views module. As you know, when we import a module, that module will end up being an object. So we can use the dot operator to access the functions defined in that module. So here we want to reference the index function. Okay, let's delete it from here. Back to our path function. As the second argument, we type out views.index. Now note that I'm not calling this function. I'm simply passing a reference to it. Django will take care of calling this function at runtime when the client sends an HTTP request to the server. So here we should not call this function. So let's quickly recap what we have done up to this point. In the views module, we created this view function. And in this view function, we simply return some plain text to the browser or the client. Now, I told you that nowhere Django knows that it should call this function. So that's why we added the URLs module to our app. And in this module, we mapped the root URL to this view function. There's one more step left. We need to tell Django about this app because up to this point, Django is not aware of this app. So let's collapse the products folder and open up the PyShop folder. In this folder, we have another URLs module, and this is like the root or the parent URLs module in our Django project. Let's open this and scroll down. Once again, you see this URL patterns variable that is set to a list. In this list, again, we're calling the path function. As the first argument, we're telling Django that, hey, any URLs that start with admin, delegate them to the admin app. So every Django project by default comes with this admin app, which gives us a beautiful administrative panel. We're going to work with that soon. So in this module, we should also tell Django about our products app. So let's add another object to this list. Once again, we call the path function. Now we tell Django that, hey, any paths or any URLs that start with products / delegate them to the products app. So we want Django to delegate the handling of that request to this URLs module that we defined in the products app. Okay? How do we do that? Very easy. Back to the main or the parent URLs module. On line 16, we have this import statement. Let's expand it. So basically, we have two import statements. Look at the second one. From Django.urls module, we're importing the pass function. There is another function that we need to import, and that is the include function. Now we're going to use this function on line 21. So as the second argument to the pass function, we call include. And here we need to reference the URLs module in the products app. So we type out products.urls. So take a look. In the products app, we have this module, URLs. That is why we type products.urls. But we don't type out .py. Django will automatically take care of that. Now, at this point, you might be a little bit confused or intimidated by all these various steps that you have to follow. They may look foreign to you, but trust me, this becomes second nature as you practice building Django applications. It's actually very easy. It's just the first time that you have to follow these conventions defined in Django framework. Once you understand the concept, it becomes really easy. So basically, because we created a new app, the products app, only once ever we need to write this line of code to tell Django that, hey, any URLs that start with products / send them to the URLs module in the products app. So we write this line of code only once. Anytime in the future, we want to define a new view function. First, we go to the views module, we create a new function, and then we go to the URLs module in that app and define a new URL pattern to map that view function to a URL endpoint. That is really easy. All right, now let's test our application. So back to the browser. Let's head over to /products. There you go. You see our hello world message here. Beautiful. But if we navigate back to the home page, we get this error, page not found. So our beautiful Django homepage disappeared. And the reason for this is that homepage is automatically generated and is only displayed when we first create a Django project. As soon as we define a new URL pattern and register it in our project, that homepage disappears. But don't worry, we're going to come back and create a new function for our homepage later in the course. Now here's your exercise. I want you to modify this Django project such that when we navigate to products/new, we'll see a page here with some text like new products. I strongly encourage you to do this exercise because it makes it really easy for you to follow the future tutorials. All right, here in the products app, let's open up the views module. In this module, we define a new view function. So define, let's call that function new. As I told you before, every view function should take this request parameter. Now here we want to return an HTTP response with the text new products. That's it. Now to make PyCharm happy, we add another line break here. So we have 2 line breaks after the index function and also 2 line breaks after the new function. These are the best practices defined in PEP 8 to format our code. So we're done with this view function. Now we need to map it to a URL endpoint. So we go back to the products app and open up the URLs module. Here we need to add another URL pattern. So we call the path function. The first argument should be new. You want to map this URL endpoint to views.new function. That's all you had to do. Now back to our browser. When we navigate to products/new, we get this message in the browser. Beautiful. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create a model in a Django project. A model is a representation of a real-world concept. For example, in an online shop, we could have models like order, customer, shopping cart, product, review, and so on. So let's go ahead and create our first model. Here in the products app, open up the models module. In this module, we're going to create a new class called product. So let's delete this comment. We don't really need it. Class product. Now we need to inherit this class from the model class in Django. So in parentheses, we type out models.model. Let's see what's going on here. So on line 1, from Django.db package, we are importing the models module. In this module, we have a class called model, and this class defines all the common characteristics and behavior for models in a Django application. For example, we want to be able to store these models in a database, or read them from a database, or delete them. These are all the common operations that we need to perform on these model objects. So by inheriting this product class from this model class, our product class will have all these capabilities built into it. We don't have to code it, okay? So, colon. Now in this class, we need to define a few attributes. What are the attributes of a product that we need to know in an online shop? We need to know their name, price, stock, image, and so on. So let's define a new attribute. We call it name, and we set it to an instance of models, the char field class. So once again, in this module, we have a class called char field, which is short for character field, and this represents a field that can contain textual data. Now here, as a best practice, we can supply a maximum length to prevent a malicious user or hacker from accidentally storing a product with an enormously large name. This can mess up with our application. So let's pass a keyword argument, max length, and we set it to 255 characters. Now let's define the price attribute. So we set price to models dot float field. So this represents a field that can contain floating point numbers. That's it. Now let's define the stock. We set this to an instance of models.integer field. And finally, let's define image underline URL to an instance of models dot, once again, char field. So in this course, we're going to use Google to find an image for our products. For example, we can find this image, right-click it, and copy its link address, which is the URL. Now, if you open up a new tab and paste that URL, you can see this is a very long string. So we don't want to enforce a maximum length of 255 characters. Instead, we want to use 2083 characters. That is the standard maximum length for URLs. So our product class or product model has these 4 attributes. Now to make PyCharm happy and remove this warning, let's put the cursor at the end of this line, press enter, then backspace to remove the indentation. Beautiful. We should also add 2 line breaks before this class. So here's one, press enter, the second line break, beautiful. So our code is formatted according to PEP 8 standards. Next, I will show you how to use this model to create a database table for storing products. In this Django project we have created, you can see we have this file db.sqlite3. This is an empty database file that Django creates, and we use this to store our data. Now, SQLite is a kind of database, and it's the simplest for small applications, but it's not suitable for large enterprise web applications. So if you want to build a real enterprise web application with Django, you need to use a proper database engine like SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle, Postgres, and so on. The good news is that Django supports all of these database engines. But SQLite is the easiest to get started, so we're going to work with this for now, and in the future I will show you how to use a proper database engine. Now, for the purpose of this tutorial, I want you to open up your browser and search for DB browser for SQLite. So on this page, sqlitebrowser.org, you can find a very simple and free application for opening SQLite databases. And as you can see here on the right side, there are executables for Windows, Mac, and so on. So when you open it, you get something like this. We can create a new database here on the top or open an existing one. Now here I'm going to drag and drop our database file right here. You can see we don't have any tables in this database. So to store data, first we need to create a table. For example, to store the list of products, we need to create a table called products, and the fields or columns we have in this table should be exactly the same as the attributes we have in our product class. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use Django to automatically create this table. We don't have to do this by hand. We can just tell Django, hey, here's our model. Go ahead and automatically create a database table for storing our products. That is very easy. So here down the bottom, let's open up a new terminal window and run Python on Windows or Python 3 on Mac, manage.py, make migrations. Make sure to spell this properly. So make migrations in one word. Now when you run this, you get this message, no changes detected, because by default, Django doesn't know about our product model. To solve this problem, we need to go back to our project and open the PyShop package. In this package, we have this settings module for storing various configuration settings for our project. So let's open this and scroll down. On line 33, you can see a variable called installed apps set to a list of strings. These are applications or apps that are automatically installed with every Django project. For example, we have this admin app, which gives us a beautiful administrative panel. You're going to work with it soon. We also have this auth app, and we use this to authenticate users. You can put them in different roles, give them different permissions. It's all about authentication and authorization. We'll look at the other installed apps in a future tutorial. So for now, let's register our products app in this list. How do we do that? First, we go to our project. Inside the products app, earlier I told you about the apps module. Take a look here. The name of this module is a little bit misleading because we're in the boundary of one app and we have a module called apps. That aside, all we have here is a class called products config where we store configuration settings for this particular app. Okay? Now we need to go back to our settings module and add the complete path to this class, including its package and module. So this class is defined in the apps module, and this module is inside of the products package. So back to the settings file. In the list of installed apps, we need to type out a string like this. Products, that's our package, dot, apps, that's our module, and then products config. Again, make sure to spell this properly. So P and C are capitalized because here we have a class, but products and apps are all in lowercase, okay? So now Django knows about our products app. So when we go back to the terminal and run the last command, we'll get a different result. So use the up arrow to bring up the last command and enter. There you go. Now we get this message, migrations for products. So inside the products folder, inside the migrations folder, we have a new module with this sequence number called initial. Let's have a quick look at the code inside this module. So back to our products app, let's expand the migrations folder. Here's our initial migration. Let's have a quick look here. So we have a class called migration. And in this class, we have this attribute called operations, which is set to a list of operations. So every migration can contain multiple operations. Look at the first operation we have here, migrations that create model. So with this operation, we can create a new database table called product. And in that table, we're going to have these fields, ID, name, price, stock, and image URL. These are the attributes that we created in our product class. But we didn't have this ID attribute. Django automatically generates this because every database table must have an ID field. And we use this to uniquely identify records in our database. Now, let's go back to the terminal. So we have a new migration, but our database is still in its previous state. We don't have a new table here yet. So we need to run this new migration to generate our product table. And that is very easy. So one more time, Python, manage.py, migrate. When we run this command, Django will look at our project. It will look at every app, and it will run the pending migrations for that app against our database. So take a look. When we run this, we get several messages. So if you scroll up, you can see applying content types .001 initial. So in the content types app, which is one of the apps installed by default, we have this migration. So Django ran this migration and this created a database table for this app. Similarly, in the auth app, which is used for authenticating users, we have this initial migration. We also have a bunch of migrations for the admin app. So Django ran all of these migrations, and down the bottom, you can see applying products initial migration. So every app can contain multiple migrations, and each migration will make a slight change to the database to add a new table or modify an existing one. So back to DB browser for SQLite. Let's drag and drop our database file one more time here to reload it. There you go. Now we have 12 tables in this database. Each table is prefixed with the app it belongs to. For example, you can see we have a table for storing our users. We have another table for storing the groups a user belongs to. We have another table for storing permissions and so on. Now here down the bottom, you can see is table products underline product. So this product table is prefixed with the name of our app, which is products. Now, if you expand this, you can see these fields in this table: ID, name, price, stock, and image URL. So this is the beauty of Django. We didn't have to come here and manually create these tables by hand. That's very time consuming. We simply created a model with these attributes, and then we ran two commands in the terminal. One for creating a new migration based on the changes we have made in our code, and the other to run the pending migrations. So now all the migrations in this project are run against our database, which means if we go back to the terminal and run python manage.py migrate, we get this new message: no migrations to apply. So here's the workflow. Next time we create a new model or modify an existing one, we should come back here in the terminal, create a new migration, and then run it. All right, here's your exercise. We want to have the concept of offering discounts in our imaginary online shop. So I want you to create a new model class called offer. And in this class, we should have three attributes. One is code, which is a textual field. For example, our offers code could be VCA2142. It's just a coupon code. Here we should also have an attribute called description. Again, this is going to be a textual field. For example, we can say 20% off all products. And then we can display this text somewhere on the homepage in the future. And finally, we need another attribute called discount, which is going to be a floating point number, like 0.2 for 20% discount. So go ahead, create this model class. Next, create a migration and run it to bring our database up to date. This is an awesome exercise for you to get your hands dirty in Django. So spend 3 to 5 minutes on this exercise. When you're done, come back, see my solution. So here in the models module, right after our product class, I'm going to define a new class. Class offer. This class should also derive from the model class in Django. Here we add the attributes. So the first one is code, which is going to be an instance of models.char field. And we set the max length to, let's say, 10 characters. Next, we add the description. Once again, we're going to have a char field with max length of 255 characters is sufficient. And finally, we need discount. And we're going to set this to an instance of models.float field. So here's our offer class. Now we need to create a migration. So over here, I'm going to open up a terminal window. This is the main terminal window where our web server is running. So I'm going to create a new terminal window and run python manage.py make migrations. Django detected a change in our models, so it created this new migration number 2 called offer. And this migration will create the offer table in our database. So let's go ahead and run it. Python 3 manage.py migrate. Beautiful. Now let's drag and drop our database here one more time. Our database is refreshed. As you can see, in the products app, we have this new table, offer, with these 4 columns: ID, code, description, and discount. In this tutorial, I'm going to talk to you guys about the administrative panel of Django applications. So here in the browser,
Okay, we're going to go ahead and stop this video. That's tutorial 15. Go ahead and pause throughout this video, or if you need to go back, take a look at some of this information. There's a lot of information in this one. I usually don't use, well, I've never used Django. Actually, I use HTML or CSS or some type of coding software, but this looks like this has a lot to do with database information. So go back, review, and please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll be on tutorial 16 next time.